one now, since we're talking health, let's look at our children as well. Now, a report released by St. Ghana shows that most children under the age of 5 years study in schools with bad infrastructure. These children are mostly from deprived communities across the country. Speaking during the launch of its monitoring report on kindergarten education, Senior Programs Officer of St. Ghana, Harriet Nyama Ajimine, well, made those assertions. She's actually joined me in the studio so we can have a discussion on the reports that they've released. Ma'am, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Are you all right there? You okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
Fantastic. Now let's look at your latest report about kindergarten children. First of all, why kindergarten children? What did the research seek to achieve with this focus?
Thank you very much. SEND as an organization has been working on education. Our interest is in basic education because we believe that the foundations must be right, and then we proceed into the higher levels of education. And so we've done work around basic education. Okay. And we realized that we need some attention also on kindergarten education, since it was made part of basic education in 2007. This activity was supported or is supported by the World Bank under a project that we are running titled Making the Budget Work for Ghana, where we are trying to work with government or hold government to ensure that the service delivered under the education and health sectors are of quality, and that we are promoting access as well. Okay.
Now let's get into the details of the reports that you launched today. You're saying that most of kindergarten schools are in structures that are bad and that expose the children to serious risks. Can you give us a bit more details to exactly what you found that made you come to that conclusion?
Okay, the study did not state that most. For those that we sampled, we mentioned that about 14% have no structures. Okay. So we could say that they operate from under trees, you know, and you could find these in both public and private sector, the private KGs, you know, but then we have more of these, about 24% of that in the public sector. So it means that in the private KGs, they have better structure or structures than you would find in the public ones. But this is not across the board. There are certain areas that you would find most of these poor structures or under tree schools. And we have said that Upper West, out of the 4 regions that we looked at, is the West affected.
So you looked at 4 regions?
Yes.
Upper West,
Northern region, Upper East region, and Greater Accra region. Okay. And so you will find a few schools in Greater Accra, for instance, that are in poor shape, but it's not comparable with what you would find probably in the Upper West region.
So Upper East, Upper West, Northern region, and then Greater Accra region. How many schools would you say you perhaps looked at, sampled?
We sampled 120 schools, 60 from the private and 60 from the public, but we had 118 participating in the study.
You definitely had some recommendations. I mean, last year, I think early last year, we saw a school, a kindergarten block collapse on children. 6 of them died. I mean, that's terrible. So with these reports that you've just brought in, that about 14% of private kindergartens have virtually
both private and public,
both private and have no structures at all.
Of these 14%, about 24% can be found in the public sector.
That tells us that the situation is not the risk that the children are exposed to is not as over as perhaps many people would have thought. That story of the children, 6 children dying, would have allowed. What are the recommendations you have in mind?
For the infrastructure aspect, we are only calling on government to expedite action in building the schools as they have promised. Because at least in last year's budget, 2017 budget, government stated that they have identified very poor structures and they will rehabilitate them. This year, its budget also mentioned that government will build 200 kgs. And we are all looking forward to that. At least we started KG in the public sector, and it's been 10 years now. So how long do we continue to wait and still keep our children under trees or in very poor structures? I'll bet we have made some progress, but we shouldn't say that because it's just 14 or 24% for the public sector. We should not work hard to get all children in good structures.
Okay.
To go to school.
Usually, I know that when you launch your reports like this, you know, there are follow-ups. You're keeping up with the ministry, the sector ministry, and then you're making sure that something has been done. I'm curious to find out what St. Ghana has done or is looking to do regarding the promises that you say, for example, that government has made, and of course, following the death of those children, those 6 kindergarten children. Have you had any engagements that sort of brings us a bit closer to the answers that we're looking for?
Sure, we do engage government. We do engage the Ministry of Education and Ghana Education Service, especially a number of times. And I must say they have been open, engaging with us and accepting our recommendations.
So there's one thing accepting the recommendation.
Even when they are implementing the recommendation, you cannot attribute all that to yourself, because there are other civil society organizations who are also advocating for similar things. So you cannot always say that you contributed towards that. And I should say government does listen. It is the time that within which they would implement it that normally takes long, and that is why we don't go to sleep with just one encounter, because we will engage them at the national level, we will engage parliament, we will go to the districts, because there are certain things that the district assembly should be able to do that does not require national level
intervention. I was actually asking because I wanted to find out, and I wanted you to do a very personal assessment of it for me, whether or not, as you're the programs manager, you've been at this. Sometimes it gets frustrating. So I want to find out, I asked that question because I wanted to find out from you, from a very personal perspective, whether or not you think we're making any tangible progress, and whether we're not just paying lip services to the safety of our children when we have sent them out there to go and study to become better people in future.
I'm sure government does listen, and they have put in place interventions for it. We would have to put government on its toes to keep to the pace, to build the schools. It involves resources, and government will have to commit to do them. I have said this morning that where there's a will, there's a way. And government has shown that with the free SHS policy or initiative. Because it is a flagship program, government is paying some attention, good attention to it. Okay. And so they should do same for all the other levels of education, all the other sectors, because we cannot leave the foundation level behind and go and support the top.
Right. Yeah. Where do we go from here? Finally, where do we go from here? And now that you've done Upper East, Upper West, Northern region, and the Greater Accra region, are you looking at any other regions? And
no, these are our 4 operational regions, but also for this particular project that we are implementing, the Global Partnership for Social Accountability. Under that initiative, we are doing 30 districts out of these 4 regions, and we will stay within those. The reports will be circulated widely for any other region to pick some issues from them, some recommendations to run with, because with some of the findings you can generalize them, especially unprofessional teachers in the private schools, private KGs. About 76% of them are not trained. Wow. You know, but for GES standard, each KG should have at least 2/3 of its teachers trained or professional teachers. And so if you have the 2/3 rather untrained, then it calls for action. Right. And this one, we are asking GES to step up its own monitoring, you know, to get the schools to get accreditation and to get trained teachers, employed trained teachers. It's because nobody is looking. Right. Yeah. Monitoring. Yeah. That I believe is. Thank you so much for coming through.
It's Mrs. right? Mrs. Harriet Nyamajimai. Mrs. Harriet Nyamajimai is the programs officer with the St. Ghana, and they've been monitoring and looking at how kindergartens operate in the Upper East, Upper West, Northern and the Greater Accra region. Basically, what you should take away from this conversation is that about 76% of teachers or in the kindergartens in the private schools, I believe, are not trained, and that's a very serious matter. We're looking at the foundation, which gives you, the building blocks for you to build up into the future. So that's quite a serious issue. And 14% of the schools have no structures at all.